Federal District Judge John McConnell orders the Trump administration to at least partially release some of those food SNAP benefit funds, right, from the contingency funds. And President Trump's administration comes back and says, hey, there's not quite enough, and we don't know the logistics involved to get those funds over to the SNAP program, so there might be some delays. So he appeals. And ultimately, Judge McConnell ended up telling him that, hey, you need to fully get SNAP benefits funded for November by today, which is Friday. And apparently this got immediately appealed by the Trump administration again, because from what I understand, there's just not enough money to make it happen. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I don't know how it's all going to fold out, but in a weird way, it gives us a snapshot of what those dystopian end-of-the-world movies always look like. Technically speaking, you're having huge delays at the airport. It's probably going to get worse rather than better, right? You've got both sides apparently not wanting to reopen the government, because from what I understand, if they reopen the government, all these problems go away overnight, right? So apparently we're in day 37. It's the longest shutdown ever from what I understand. And apparently there's 16 million kids that are potentially going to be going without food. Now, there's churches and there's food banks all around the country that are stocking up. But every time they show lines outside those food banks, once again, it looks like a dystopian movie, like an end-of-the-world scenario. I think if I was another country, this might be the perfect time to really, have some mayhem occur. If you were another country, wouldn't this be the absolute perfect time to attack America? And what do we do if the Trump administration is being forthright and honest, and if there's really not enough money to fund SNAP? How the heck are we going to get the government restarted? At first it's like a pain in the ass situation, and you feel like somebody's holding you over a barrel, right? But then as you look at it, it's like we've got a lot of people that are relying on SNAP benefits. And if they don't get food, you're probably going to see every single food bank quickly get depleted. So I've decided if the kids aren't going to eat, then maybe you and I shouldn't eat either. Are we ready for our first annual Walk, Talk, Vent Fast, where we're going to attempt to go 40 days and 40 nights without any food? If you guys are with me, let me know down below. If you'd like to just continue with the walk like we normally do, let me know that down below. That might be a little bit more feasible. This just goes to show you how delicate we are at this country. Everything looks fine and dandy when you look outside the house, right? But when you pull back a couple layers of the onion, you start to realize how fragile things are. People don't have the ability to go out of pocket to pay for food. And I'm sure some of them do, right? There's probably some people on food stamps that if you were to look in their wallet, they probably have thousands of dollars. But predominantly speaking, there's a lot of people that don't have very much money at all. I know there's some people that are upset that a lot of the people that are here illegally have food stamp benefits. And I know it's kind of irritating when you hear these stories about how some people get $5,000 a month on a card. We've heard these outrageous stories before. I don't really know if they're true. If they are getting benefits, I'd like to think that they're getting the same benefits that Americans are getting, not that they're getting something on top of it all. But even for them to get the same benefits we are in a country where our debt is just through the roof, it doesn't seem like a really smart plan to bring people here and then give them free benefits left and right. With that being said, I don't like the idea of people being here and not being able to eat. So whether you're Democrat or Republican, I think we can all agree this is one of those issues that it's not fun either way. But something does have to be done, definitely. Landis Greer says, how about no government official gets paid until the shutdown starts? I've been hearing a lot of people talking about that. Even if you took away senators and congressmen, even if you took away their money, they're all worth 7, 8, 9, 10 figures. I don't think their pay is going to bother them one bit, whether you take it or let them keep it. Whatever says my local food bank gives me a full cart of food for one person. They even let you pick some of it. I'm blessed to have this. That was the scariest comment. Doesn't that sound like a nice comment? Like, hey, my food bank's the best. If we are, as Americans, thinking about food banks, that is about the scariest thing ever. Because could you imagine in a movie, it looks like you're on the precipice of war, everything's going to shit, quote unquote shit is hitting the fan, and you go looking for answers, and could you imagine if the answer was, my local food bank gives me a full cart of food, and sometimes they even let me pick some of it. That is the scariest comment that I think I've ever read on YouTube. And you guys should be scared when you hear that, because it's like, that sounds like somebody that's already going through the hell, and they're not going to be alone. As we progress in the future, as these layoffs keep coming forth, more and more people are going to be relying on these food banks. We're going to have to start as a country making some really dire decisions, because it looks like stuff is getting worse, not better. Whenever you hear about things aging and dying, everything gets progressively worse as you age, and that's what leads to death, right? That entropy, if you will. Well, that's why we walk on this channel. We're aware that we're aging. We're aware that we're not getting any younger. But by walking, we postpone that. Walking would be if our government made a smart decision in life. That's what walking is. Walking is us saying that unlike our government and our leadership, we're going to try to make the smartest decisions we can. So walk every day with me. Know that you're not alone. It's not just me and you. There's Mala, there's Sean, there's Micah, there's a handful of others, and there's no reason why we can't grow this together. If your neighbor wants to walk, tell them to start watching the dang show. We'll walk, all of us together. By the way, I weighed in at 194 today. Hi, how's it going? I have a lot more weight to lose, so if you guys want to join me, we've got about 50 days left, so let's do this together. Another thing that makes it look like an end of the world movie is you see a lot of people saying that, how are we going to be able to fly at Thanksgiving and Christmas? Could you imagine if there's nobody in the towers and you end up having to cancel your Thanksgiving plans? That would be a nightmare. Actually, you know what? We complain about in-laws so much. Maybe that would be a blessing in disguise. Maybe instead of going to your parents' or grandparents' house, maybe you and your family and your kids, maybe you invite the neighbors over and you have Thanksgiving right there at your house. What do you say? Sometimes we talk about sacrifice, and don't get me wrong, I don't want young people to be sacrificing meals or anything, but I feel like a lot of us don't really know what it's like to sacrifice anymore. Sometimes you have to go without. We live in a country and a world where nobody ever wants to go without, so we kind of freak out over everything. I love the weather this time of year, but the sun is at an angle where it's like constantly right in your face. YouTube, this guy's got a good handle. It says, YouTube is run by Marxists. He says, why aren't those judges demanding that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats open the government? Open it up, Chuck. Open it up. I think it's kind of interesting that it's on day 37. I still don't know what happens as we go further along. It seems like them just being closed for a month or so makes things kind of scary for people. What if they're not able to open up? And you know as well as I do, we already know what's going to happen. In the next 4, 5, 6 days, we're going to find out at like 11:45 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It'll be like 2 a.m. We're going to find out that the government opened up, and then either Republicans or Democrats are going to be upset because their side capitulated. And I can already tell you it's going to be the Republicans that are upset, because it seems like our side always ends up capitulating, and then we go looking for the Republicans and we say they're not a real Republican. Dirtbeard says, Judge, the judge doesn't understand who approves spending. Trump isn't the king. That's kind of the weird thing. I felt like the judge is saying, hey, Trump, your administration needs to find a way to get this done. But apparently this isn't necessarily up to the president. But I would love to know your guys' thoughts, because I'm kind of in the dark about it. I'm looking into it now because it's so interesting. But I honestly thought they were going to reopen the government about a week and a half ago. Didn't happen. Taylor Libby says, isn't the judge outside of her authority in ordering Trump to do something that's technically outside of his authority? You can't make money form. So if you need $9 billion to fully fund SNAP for November, and we only have $5 billion to do it with, what happens in that situation? Could you imagine if you went to cash a check and it bounced from the SNAP benefits program? I know it wouldn't bounce, but in theory, if they don't have enough money to cover it, what do they do in that situation? A. Condre says, wouldn't it be fully funded if they just opened the government? I'm going to be watching a movie called Nuremberg this weekend, and the Nuremberg trials are really interesting in my opinion, because technically these government figures that we have, these senators and these congressmen and even the president, if we're involved in some sort of world conflict, some sort of war, and we end up losing, these same people that we revile and can't stand, they're going to potentially be in a Nuremberg situation. They're going to have to answer to a higher court if we lose. And that's what's so crazy. In world wars, I'm sure that when Germany went into it, they were thinking, we're going to win and we're going to have influence over the whole world. Handful of years later, they're done for, right? They never made it out of Moscow or out of Russia. Even then, it looked like they were kicking butt at first, right? They get all the way into the interior, destroy a bunch of Russian people, but they never made it out of the winter. Because we don't watch TV as much as we used to hear about all the movies that would come out. I'd be willing to bet half of you didn't even know that Nuremberg was coming out this weekend. I'm lucky if I see ads for movies, but I love going to movies, especially if they're not Marvel movies. And who knows, you never know. Maybe the Germans make it out of this one, No guarantee that it's based on a true story. No, just kidding. But if you're planning on watching the movie as well, or now that I've mentioned it, you're interested, let me know down below. But could you imagine if all of a sudden our senators were up, on some sort of military tribunal? And I know you're thinking, Jesse, I think that's more generals and stuff. I mean, it could be. Who knows? All I know is I'd be really disappointed if we got into some world conflict and we lost, and our senators still got to be rich and successful. That would be horrible, wouldn't it? You'd be like, I knew that senator was on the bad guy's side. I knew they were on China and Russia's side the whole time. Sometimes I do feel like our senators and stuff, sometimes I do feel like they're not on America's side. You almost have to wonder, are they on the payroll of another country? A lot of talk goes like that, right? You hear a lot of stuff about Israel, you hear a lot of stuff about China. I'm sure there's some of our leaders that are on the payroll for other countries. It would make sense. Some of that stuff you would find out about if there was a world war. I'm babbling now. I babble a lot nowadays because now is when things are slowing down with the schools right before Thanksgiving and Christmas. So I'm trying to call all the people I can, and nobody's really looking for a job today, even though they really are. The key is you got to find them. And that's kind of how weight loss is. It seems impossible, but you got to find a way. Are you just going to look at the plateau that you're having and say, I quit? No, you got to keep going. So you know what I did? I opened up my walking pad that I purchased about 6 months ago, and I finally plugged it in, and the vow that I'm making to myself is that over the next 45 or 50 days, I'm gonna take it up a notch. Remember, you're not in a competition, but in a weird way you are. Whatever you're doing nowadays, the goal is that in 5 years, you can still do that. So challenge yourself. Just because you're 50 doesn't mean you can't bust out a push-up or two. Just because you're 50 doesn't mean you can't take a second or third walk. And when it's 8 o'clock and you have that bowl of cereal on your mind, it's okay to say no, and it's okay to go without food for a while. Again, think about your poor brothers and sisters around the world. Some of them would absolutely kill to have a second and third meal, and you and I are complaining that we're overweight because we keep eating that second and third meal. I think that I can do it, you can do it, we can do it, so let's do this. If you're with me, hit the like button. Make sure you leave a comment, and if you slide that comment section over on your phone, you can actually hype this video. We're gonna start doing some more reactions, and I know I've been saying that for weeks now. I'm hoping that when we do, you venters will be there to support it. Remember, this is the year we wanna see the channel grow. At least a little. At least a little. Remember, it's really easy to do things when things are growing great and swell. It's not so easy to do things when things are tough and nearly impossible. But if I can do this, then I know you can as well. So let's battle together, and let's win this battle of the bulge, especially if it's fat around your midsection. Have a wonderful day. I will see you tomorrow. Never give up.